So, good morning. It's great to be with you today. I'm so excited to hear more about this technology and the software you're developing. But could you start by telling us a little bit about sort of set the stage, paint the picture of what are the issues we're looking at? My father had Alzheimer's and it was a 10-year decline before his passing. My mom, who's 90, has dementia. So, for me, this is a really personal issue of Alzheimer's and dementia. And what your company is doing is just really groundbreaking and truly but let's look at the global state of dementia, and if you could just fill us in a little bit on that, and then we'll move forward.
Good morning, Kerry. Great to be with you. Yeah, as you mentioned, a lot of families are struggling with dementia these days, and even at the earlier stages of mild cognitive impairment, it's about 5.5 million people in the US and about 50 million around the world that have the diagnosis of dementia, that have functional impairment in their activities of daily living, and about 2 to 3 times as many with mild cognitive impairment that are some sort need help at home. The cost is about $1 trillion now globally. It's about 290 billions in the U.S. alone, and it's doubling in the next decade. So it's really a global problem right now.
So the issue has been traditionally what the big challenge that we've faced is early detection. So, presumably that's why it's been very difficult to come up with any kind of cure early enough so we can really tackle this catastrophic really issue. Can you just explain to us a little bit about what your company's doing, what the software is, the imaging technology, and how that is solving this global problem?
Right, exactly. So this is the classic chicken and egg problem of Alzheimer's disease. After 114 years that the disease has been described in the medical literature, there's still no cure for it. And one of the major reasons that there's no early diagnosis, as you mentioned, but people ask if what's the point of diagnosis when there's no cure? So you have to start somewhere. So that's where our solution comes in. Right now, when a person goes to a doctor with memory problems, for example, and they're diagnosed after objective cognitive and functional tests with mild cognitive impairment, they say, okay, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to progress to dementia? And as we know, 2/3 of them do not progress. So the way you can answer that question is that you need to get enough information about the actual biology of the disease. So the window into the brain, the classic window, is with cognitive tests that depends a little bit on the person's, a lot of the things that the person has, like comorbidities or the medications they're taking. So there's some inaccuracies in that cognitive test that the doctor does. Our technology looks at what's happening in the brain itself from a very safe modality that's been around for many decades now around the world called magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, which is very information rich, but it's also heavily underutilized in scientific terms. That a lot of the things that could be extracted from the image are not visible to the human eye. So that's what we have developed. We've developed this, what we call virtual microscope, that measures very subtle tissue changes at the microscopic level in every pixel of the image. So as if you're zooming in on that. So it can show, two people could be identical in, any other thing, but then their MRI images at the microscopic level could be different. So one of them could have the early stages of disease, the other one may not.
So it's fascinating to me that it can detect it fairly early on. How early? I mean, do you have a sense of how early in the game we can get a hold of what's going on within the brain, and then for the individual, how does this work? Is it like they're in an MRI machine, or how does that work? I mean, in terms of technically.
Right. So from the biology, from the science of it, we know that that changes start 10 to 20 years before the person has symptoms. Probably even earlier, like about cardiac disease, atherosclerosis builds up even from youth. So it's a very slow chronic process. In the brain also, the damage is building up over time, many years, but then from 10 to 15 years before mild cognitive impairment or before first clinical symptoms, things are in theory detectable. We haven't had any sensitive method yet to detect. There's amyloid scan that could detect, maybe it's still not as sensitive as we would like it to be, but about 5 years before. but our technology takes it back to 10 to 15 years, with the advantage of that amyloid is very non-specific. It happens in normal aging as well, whereas the changes we see in MRI is very specific to Alzheimer's disease or to neurodegeneration.
So now how can you partner up with, how is this going to impact the pharmaceutical industry, and how you can partner together to really bring solutions to the public, and what are the different ways that you can assist that process? I know that's, helping to find perhaps patients or individuals for clinical trials, whatever that may be, but if you could just walk us through some of the partnerships that we may see rolling out because of this software and this imaging technology.
Right, that's a very critical point you mentioned, because pharmaceutical industry has been classically failing, as you might have heard in the news, one after another. These clinical trials of anti-amyloid have been announcing failure one after another, unfortunately, except the very last one that Biogen announced with aducanumab, that they have seen that they met both primary endpoints of improving cognition and function, or slowing down cognition and function. So one major question has been, are we even testing these drugs in the right population? If we're going only with amyloid, which is very nonspecific, we already have a lot of people who don't have Alzheimer's in both placebo and treatment arms. So how do you enrich the population how do you get more specific patients? So that's one way we come in and we say that. If you did amyloid alone, you had 68% chance of being right in a 5-year trial, whereas if you add our technology to it, you get to 91%. So that could make a huge difference in the statistical analysis of the treatment versus placebo arm. And then also, when the drug is in the market, how are you going to give it? Who should take it, right? You can't screen everybody with amyloid PET, positron emission tomography. It's very expensive. It's not covered under Medicare right now, and it's not even, the PET scanners are not even available everywhere in the world, whereas MRI is. So it's something that comes into that picture.
So as we move forward, then it's really getting the word out about this kind of possibilities and being proactive. I mean, the exciting thing for me, as someone who's lived through this in my family, is that, oh my gosh, if we can get ahead of the game on this, the implications are tremendous. So what excites you about the possibilities, and where are you looking down the road? What are we going to see next here?
Well, I'm most excited about that there's some hope that the disease may be able to be slowed down or prevented, hopefully. And then more so on the preventive measures, what things we can do to stop it from happening in the first place. There are good things. As a clinician, we counsel people to exercise, not smoke, eat better, sleep better, and all that. People don't take our advice seriously. But when they have something in hand, showing that, something is really going on, damage is building up in the brain, it's really, you should act. And also now there are these additional studies going on that show that these behavioral changes actually do affect cognition. And if for some reason, for family history, or you haven't taking good care of yourself, you get symptoms, you get into mild cognitive impairment or dementia, then there's still hope that you could slow it down and say that maybe it's not too late to improve the quality of life.
So what's next for your company? What's your next step here? In sort of the development of this, what are we seeing as the next stage of it? And what can we be looking forward to? And is it something we can start asking, requesting something like this? Is it at that stage yet?
So far we have demonstrated the proof. We have published the blind testing results in a white paper last month on 411 blind cases that we performed with about 90% accuracy, which is 20% above amyloid, which is the current practice. And also we got a patent granted from the USPTO about last month as well. Yeah, and so we keep developing. We're in the third-party validation stage with Kaveh in Toronto, Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation, and also Banner Alzheimer Institute here in the US, both at the pre-dementia stage of the disease and pre-symptomatic. So they have different clinical applications. And then after that, we're also in talks with FDA since early this year rather, about the regulatory aspects of it for clinical use. But in the meantime, pharma is very interested. We presented in CTAD last week, clinical trials in Alzheimer's disease, and pharma has a lot of attention to it to add this tool to amyloid for patient enrichment and also improving clinical outcomes.
So what has surprised you about the what you found in the trials or in the what you've seen so far in the results? Is there anything that caught you by surprise that you didn't expect to find?
Well, science is full of surprises. You have hypotheses and then you get proven wrong. What surprised me maybe was the interim analyses that some trials were stopped too early. It looks like, including aducanumab, that ended up showing some promise, it was initially stopped too early because of some interim futility analysis. This is a very long, chronic process, neurodegeneration in the brain. So, and there's caution about interim analyses. Statistical analyses may be inaccurate because you haven't given the brain enough time to respond. So that was probably something that surprised me most, but I'm glad that we are seeing some effect in these treatments, and the prospect is really bright in the future, especially with combination therapies. So amyloid is only one component of the disease. There's tau protein, there's neuroinflammation, and there are lots of companies developing therapies for those targets. And I'm very hopeful that a combination therapy eventually will help prevent and cure the disease.
Well, I absolutely love that, and it can't come at a better time. Truthfully, can we just, and I know we started off talking about the big picture. Can you just highlight what has been the difficulty in terms from coming up with a cure because of the late not being able to get a grip on when this things, and so just why has that been the main reason? Is just coming to it too late in the past?
I didn't quite grab the
Oh yeah,
question.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying, just to circle back to how we started up looking at what has been the initial problem, and then how is this the solution?
Well, I would say the main problem is that the nature of the disease has been, maybe still is not fully known. I mean, we keep learning about this process. Initially, when Dr. Alzheimer's described it in 1906, it was probably not even the form that we know today, the sporadic Alzheimer's disease. It was in a younger patient. But we keep learning about the process, and because it is chronic, it's difficult to study. And animal models are not good representations of the human disease process. So we keep learning and we keep, testing hypotheses. That's the major problem, that as you are attempting to treat, you're also learning about the process itself. So it's like a moving target. Yeah.
And I would think it's so individual, in the whole process, so that being able to image and really get the individual brain, you can really pinpoint specifically how we can treat this moving forward. Is there anything else you'd like to add to sort of explain to folks what's going on with this imaging and how it's moving the ball forward that we haven't discussed?
Sure. Yeah, maybe the part of the previous question you asked that I didn't quite answer, the experience for the user, for families and patients, will be, it's a simple process. It's a MRI scan. It's very safe. There's no radiation involved, no X-ray involved. It's relatively quick. It takes about half an hour, and it gives the doctor a lot of information about the brain. We're very lucky that there's a lot of government support, and it's increasing year after year. A lot of industry support for these efforts, and we hope that we get this into the hands of the users and impact people's lives.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is that good?
Yeah. Great.
Excellent.
I'm going to just wrap it up. I'll edit it if you want to just wrap it up. Just say thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I truly appreciate it, and I look forward to watching the progress as you move forward with this incredible brain imaging technology. And if there's anything, if you want to just end with your company name and what we're looking forward to.
Sure. So the company name is Darmiyan. I'm Dr. Kaveh Vejdani, Chief Medical and Technology Officer. I would like to thank you for the opportunity and thank all the sponsors and collaborators. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.